President and CEO of Rutland Regional Medical Center. And I've known and worked with Tom over probably 20 years now. And I have seen him set a very ambitious vision for an organization and deliver on that. And there's not a lot of leaders that can really say they've done that in their career. So I want to talk to you about that today. And so maybe you start there. Tell me about the vision for the organization, how you set that, and how you've gone about achieving that.
So the vision for the Rutland Regional Medical Center that we set probably 20 years ago almost now, not quite, was to be the best community health system in New England. I remember the day we wrote it. I remember where we wrote it. It was in my cabin on Lake Champlain with the senior leadership team. And one of the VPs said, "We're not thinking big enough. We need to have a vision that will motivate the organization." And the team together wrote a version of that vision. It got edited a bit after that and refined as the years went along, but it didn't change in essence from that day. It was very, very, it was a very important moment. And it's very simple, it's not very complicated, but the words ended up being chosen very carefully. Community, because we are very embedded in this community. We don't see ourselves as an academic medical center, we're a community health system. We like being a community health center system. And this whole idea of best is also the critical component there. It implies measurement, it implies comparison, and best in New England, of course we're in New England, that's why we chose that. So it was a very, very important moment. People often ask me two questions about the vision. One is, if that's what you want to be, who's best now? And I always say, I don't know. We have ways we've defined it and measured it. There's no one organization best at everything we care about here. And it's really a journey more than it is a destination. It's something we'll always be working on. We'll never be best enough because there's always more to go. And the other question people ask me is, so why do it? And in the end, I always say it's really about patients. Our patients deserve to have the best care we can render and deliver. And it's spoken to people, and that's what's been really important. It's really driven the direction of the organization over quite a long time now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that you've been incredibly steadfast in its achievement, and I'm sure there's been setbacks along the way and times where it felt like an uphill battle. How did you persevere through some of those moments?
It just seemed right, and the vision was never in doubt. Sometimes getting there was in doubt, that's for sure. And we tried different things to kind of break through and make progress, and then things aligned that allowed us to kind of get over some big hurdles, including partnerships, including right people in other positions beyond me. It's having the right team in place and just having the right moment to actually kind of go, we've gotten there, where we're not gotten there. We've come over the hump. We're really now making progress and seeing some things change in a very, very positive way.
Yeah, it's been exciting to watch. I mean, as you and I worked together for many years, kind of laying a foundation, and I think that that work then took it to a whole nother level where you really worked on employee engagement, real strong relationships with the physicians and getting them into a leadership role. And from there, to me, from an outside point of view, seems to be where you catalyzed a lot of energy.
Yeah, I think the two things that allowed us to break through, people overuse the word culture, I think, or it feels like it's in everything you read, right? How do you change a culture? To be honest with you, I'm not sure how, but I know we did. And I think sometimes you change a culture just by persevering and keeping at it. But the two pieces that I think really, and you hit on them, that have allowed us to break through is the cultural changes with the staff and with the doctors. Let's do the doctors first. The doctors, when I came here 27 years ago, I always say it was the wild, wild west, where the most cherished value was autonomy. And now it's collaboration, which is, I mean, it's so dramatically different. And what caused that change? Well, there was structural change. When we began, most of the physicians were in private practice. They had no allegiance to the organization other than a place they could send their patients. Now they all work here within the organization. But beyond that part of structure is we very seriously made them leaders, had physician leaders emerge, paid people to be leaders, gave them real authority. Before that, you know, I kid, we pretended to pay them to be leaders and they pretended to lead. And then they didn't. And then we found the right ones and we freed up enough of their time so they could really do it. And we really let them. I mean, became part of the decision making. It changed the physician culture in the most remarkable and dramatic way. It's one of the two things I'm most proud of, frankly, that we've done here. The other is the employees. We have 6 goals, as you know. Goals that we set many years ago to achieve the vision and complete our mission have really not changed much. The 6th one, I must admit, when I began, I didn't see as important as the others, and it turns out I was really, really wrong, and it turns out it was the most important one. It started out as a goal that said we wanted to be an employer of choice, a place that people came and worked and stayed. And we rewrote it a few years later to be a goal around staff engagement. We wrote it as we wanted to create an environment where people could commit their hearts and minds to the care of their patients and each other. The words were terrific, first of all, and words matter.
Absolutely.
And we knew that's what we wanted to do, and honestly, when we rewrote that, I don't think we knew how we were going to achieve it. I've told this story often, but I think the most important thing we did in that was ask the right question of a series of focus groups of staff. And the question was, think of a moment in your life when you were all in. What allowed that to happen? It doesn't need to be here at Rutland Regional. It could be another employer. It could be a sports team. It could be a volunteer organization. It doesn't matter where. What allowed you to be all in? And staff told us 8 things, which we've termed the 8 drivers of engagement. The most important one was having a leader who supported me and coached me and made me better, and we talk about that a lot. And the others are important too: teamwork and learning, having enough resources, good two-way communication, recognition, personal relationships. Those 8 drivers we've really, really worked on. But the leadership one is the most important one, I believe. I always say to staff here, there are no perfect leaders. God knows I'm not one. But if leaders are doing their job, they're making you better. They're making the team better. They have your back. Every new employee, I ask this question. You ever have a leader who didn't have your back? And everybody who's worked in the world for a while raises their hand and says, yes, I've had somebody who didn't have my back. And I always say, so how long did you work for them? The answer in one way or another is always as short a time as possible. Because people leave leaders. They don't leave jobs or organizations, at least in my experience. So getting people to feel supported allows them to, you create an environment where they can become engaged. They have to do it themselves then, right? There's energy on their part that has to come along.
Sure.
But if you don't create that environment, you will never get there. And we've gotten there, and that's so powerful because it allows everything else to happen. The success of an organization does not rest on any one person or even small group of people. It really is when you can get that energy going towards a vision in the right way, and people believe it's theirs. And it's when we see our engagement scores now, which are very good. I always say to people, it's the secret sauce. It's what makes everything else possible. And I absolutely believe that. And those good scores, when we get them every year now, it's like Christmas morning to me. It's the best. And so that staff engagement, along with the physician engagement and leadership, that most dramatically has changed this organization in ways that I think are really terrific.
Excellent. One of the things that I've noticed in the last, say, 5 years or so are the number of external validations, recognition that the organization has received around the employee culture, around quality, safety. How do you use that external recognition, that external validation to keep things going? How do you use that in the organization?
Yeah, we do use external validation as a measure of progress. I don't think we try to teach to the test. We're not really out there kind of trying to win every award known to mankind. Not that we don't care about them, but it's really not the point in winning awards. But when you do, it's great to celebrate them because it is a form of recognition, and recognition for the staff, and it re-emphasizes that we're going in the ways that we're meant to be, and it really does provide some additional energy around that. I remember a couple of years ago when we first won a big award from the U.S. News and World Report. I mean, staff were just totally jazzed about that, and they should have been. It was a very cool thing. And we had a big barbecue out in the back lawn, and we gave everybody T-shirts with the awards on the back and so forth. And I must admit, I wondered whether, and we said, if you want to wear them that day, you can. You don't have to. And I wondered ahead of time whether people would do it. And I came to work that day, and it was a sea of blue shirts.
Oh, wow.
It was so wonderful to see that, because it was people taking pride in what they did and the success of the organization and their part in that success. And to me, that just it allows you to reinforce where you're going and what you're trying to get done. And so that's how we've used them, is really to reinforce the vision, reinforce that we're making progress towards the vision, and don't get too caught up in them, but don't ignore them either.
Excellent. That's great. So you mentioned one of the things that you're most proud of is the work with the physicians and creating that real leadership by physicians. As you think back over your career here, what are some of the other kind of things that you're most proud of accomplishing with the organization?
So the things I'm most proud of, we talked about changing the physician culture and really changing the staff culture as well. Is probably long lasting. From those things, I see it as a result of those things, really. I think we've substantially improved the quality of the care we provide. A lot of the awards we've won are really around quality and safety, and people take it very seriously. Back in the day, when I was first here, there was a sense of like, if somebody made a mistake, you didn't talk about it. It was something like, and physicians, didn't want anybody knowing if they'd made a mistake. It was not a good thing. That change of openness and saying, oh wait, made a mistake, let's put it on the table, let's examine it, let's understand the processes that led to that mistake, let's get beyond the finger pointing, and understand how we could not make that mistake again. That change is really, really, really important. People need to feel safe in order to do that, and it needs to be a bit celebrated, but to me that's a dramatic change. The other one where I'm really proud of what we've done is on customer service. We have driven customer service from kind of a mediocre level. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. In a couple places it was not great, even that. It was pretty bad. With that, we had an outside partner who worked out well. We used the Studer Group to help guide us. It's not that they had magic, it's just that they were really certain about some things that they thought would work. And sometimes certainty is value in and of itself, and they've been a great partner. We just signed another 3-year contract with them. So our patient satisfaction scores have gone way, way, way up. I like to call out the emergency department as sort of my kind of most important example. When we began, their patient satisfaction scores were in the 12th percentile. That is really bad. And they made a series of changes. They started patient rounding, they did callbacks, they did leader rounding, they use a process we call AIDIT. We have service standards that they've adopted, plus they've done some very specific things in the ED, like immediate bedding of patients, a variety of changes. They're always now in the top quartile of patient satisfaction. There have been months where they're at the 97th percentile of patient satisfaction across the country of EDs. It's really a remarkable change. And ED I always see as a bit of the bellwether for the organization because it's the real front door of the hospital. Virtually every patient who's admitted here comes through the ED, and it sets the tone for their relationship with us. Very dramatic, and it's happened on the inpatient side, the clinics. It's been broad. It's not that staff didn't care about their patients before; they always cared about their patients. But I don't think we gave them the language and the processes for making it clear how much they cared about their patients. So what in many ways this has done, these pieces we put in place, is it allows people to create relationship with patients rapidly. So they feel cared about, that there's a personal connection, and that we are really here for them. And that's been a big improvement. Staff would say so. And it's pretty cemented in at this point. We're not, there have been other attempts over the years at service excellence that kind of got going and then fell away, and got going and fell away.
Yeah.
This could fall away too if it's not cared for and fed over time.
Yeah.
But it's much more solidly based this time than it had been in the past, and that's really satisfying.
Excellent. So we've talked a lot about the organization and how that's evolved and transformed over time. I want to focus on you a little bit. Can you describe to me, your leadership approach and how you see that today, and how you see how that has transformed and changed over time, if it has?
Yeah, my leadership style has definitely changed and matured over time. When I began in this role 21 years ago, I'd come out of a VP role where a lot of it was really very externally oriented and I'll call it businessy. I talk about market share and cost and returns on investment and stuff like that. And I remember realizing one day when I was with a group of the organization's leaders, down to the shift manager kind of level, that they had no idea what I was talking about and could have cared less. It's just not where they lived and what they did. It meant nothing to them. Their work was all about patient care, and I was speaking Greek, and they were speaking Chinese. It was just, I was not getting it. Those things are not unimportant, and that's the world I kind of came out of.
Right.
And I discovered that I needed to be, in some ways, more basic, but really connect more to the purpose of the organization and come back to the vision, come back to the mission of the organization as a touchstone in almost everything I talked about. That we're here for patients every day, all the time. And that's why. Even on the financial issues, we do not exist to make money. As I've said many times, we do need to make money in order to take care of patients, but we don't take care of patients in order to make money. Kind of saying that in those ways and say, no, that we're always about that. And then quality will come, and then patient satisfaction will come, and then market share will come, growth will come. but it needed for me to change the way I communicated and thought about the organization and become less technically oriented and more vision creator, and stay by that vision and hold fast to it. I think the other thing that I got better at was transparency. One of the things staff will say here now is, boy, we know what's going on. I mean, there's stuff all the time. It's like, even when they don't rank us as high as I'd like on some things, they always say, yeah, we always know what's going on. It's really transparent what's happening. That kind of communication I've gotten better at, the organization's gotten better at. It's really, 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 really important, and it takes a ton of energy. Sometimes I feel like I say the same thing 1,000 times, but that's often what it takes, is that idea of staying on message and kind of being consistent and tying back to purpose and tying back to purpose and tying back to purpose and mission and vision is really is something that I've gotten better at over time. Those are probably the ways that's most changed for me. It's you grow into it. I people have asked me why I stayed in this job as long as I have, and I always think, well, why wouldn't you? I mean, it's a great job. You get to do something that's incredibly useful to your community. You're taking care of people. We've had the resources to do the job well, which not every organization has, to be candid. And those drivers of engagement that I talked about earlier, about having leaders who supported me, having a great team, having competent people around me, having personal relationships, getting recognition, learning, those things have worked for me personally too, and it's why it's been so fun to be here all that time, because those things occurred for me on an individual level as well as trying to transform the culture. And that's really what's made it a ton of fun. And on the learning piece, we always talk about learning as one of those 8 drivers. I am way better at my job than I was 20 years ago. I made a lot of dumb mistakes 20 years ago, but I still make some dumb mistakes, but not quite as frequently as I used to.
Yeah, I want to go on a little deeper on that. So, I mean, when I work with leaders around the country, I notice that some people, when they get into that senior leadership role, begin to coast. But you strike me as a leader who continues to grow and develop and learn. And it's something you haven't taken your foot off the gas on. How do you do that? How do you, at this stage of your career, focus on learning and growth and development? What drives that? And how do you get that support?
Yeah, how do I keep learning as an old guy? I don't know that there's a secret to that. To me, it goes back to some intellectual curiosity. I find health policy issues and the work we do in caring for people like endlessly fascinating. I don't feel like we've gotten it right. I feel like there's still so much left to do. And finding new pieces of the work to do and new ways to think about it. I've been very involved in the all-payer model here in Vermont and trying to make it real. And it's been frustrating at moments, to be honest with you. And God knows whether we're really going to get there or not. I don't know. But I came to understand that the status quo was really not sustainable. We cost too much. And we need to change the way we think about delivering health care, or else the community, the state, the country is not going to be able to afford us. Which means really thinking hard about what the incentives are and how you change it. I mean, to me, that's fascinating. It's fascinating work. You need to get to a point where we can stop thinking about your own career and thinking about what is good for your community and your organization, your institution over a long period of time. And if you can do that, there's not an end point. You're not getting to a destination, right? It just keeps going.
Yeah.
But it also makes me think about kind of my own role at moments too, and saying, okay, when do you put it down?
Mm-hmm.
Really hard for me, because as you know, I'm in the midst of putting it down. I've announced my retirement, and I saw the musical Hamilton a couple years ago, and it's an unbelievably fabulous piece of art. If you've not seen it, to anyone who sees this, please go and see it. It's just terrific. One of the more powerful scenes to me, maybe it's just because of the point it is in my life, is the scene when Washington decides he's stepping down after his second term as president.
Mm-hmm.
And Alexander Hamilton actually wrote the farewell address, a very famous speech, and Hamilton was the primary author of the address, and they turned it into a song. But Washington has a line just before they sing where he talks about, let's show them how to say goodbye. And I just find it very powerful, because this idea of the institution that he helped create, Washington, living well beyond him, but him setting an example for others to follow in the future, to me, that it's such a great lesson, right? It's in the end, he saw it not about him, but he also was still leading in the way he said goodbye. And it's like, oh man, isn't that a powerful thing?
Wow.
So to me, I've thought about that a lot lately, because I want to do this in a way that allows the institution to thrive and continue to grow and do the great work it's been doing way beyond when I'm here to do it, because that's why you have institutions, so that they succeed long before the individuals are in them.
Excellent. That's really poignant. So we've talked a lot about some of the wisdom you've gathered along the way. So any other, as you kind of reflect back on your career and leaving the institution in such great shape, any kind of leadership nuggets or pieces of wisdom that you would share with kind of up and coming leaders, not necessarily at Rutland Regional Medical Center, but leaders across the country? Like what are those nuggets of wisdom that you would want to pass on?
Nuggets of wisdom to pass on. Not sure I have many. There are a couple things I always used to say at the beginning, which are still true. One is the truth's always in the middle. Whenever somebody brings you a problem, make sure you hear the other side of the problem, because it's never the way one person told you it is. Please always look. The world is gray. There's really very little black and white. The other piece I always think about is, I want to hear bad news fast. I'd rather hear something didn't go well immediately, because then you can do something about it and move forward with it. Other things that I've done wrong over the years. One is sometimes I've been slow to make a hard decision, especially around people. When there's not a good fit, and gosh, you're thinking about the person a lot and their situation, and not always what's best for the organization. I've let some people go over the course of years. I've never regretted letting them go afterwards. I've always regretted I didn't do it sooner.
Yeah.
Almost always. So, but the other side of that is, this is a piece of wisdom I don't know, is there's something to be said for kindness too. I mean, there's two sides to that, and balancing those things out is important, because I don't want an organization that kind of moves too quickly on those things, because rarely are there people who don't bring some value, even if they're not a perfect fit. And understanding that value isn't always evident in the first moment, along the way. And finally, this is a stolen piece of wisdom. And I stole it from Harry Truman, who is one of my heroes. I'm going to paraphrase because I can't do the exact quote. But Harry Truman believed and spoke about power some. And essentially what he said was, every time I use my positional power, my power because of my office, every time I use that positional power, I'm diminished. The only real power I have is the power to persuade. Persuade people that the direction we're going, the vision we're trying to get to is the right one. And when I can do that, that's the power that counts and makes a difference over time. Yeah, you need that other power. You need that positional power. People need to know it's there, but try to minimize how you use it because it really does diminish you when you do. He had a much more poignant and direct quote about it, but I mean, I think about that a lot. Mostly we have a power to persuade, not more than that. And if you can do that, then you can get somewhere.
Cool. Excellent. Can I turn it off?
There you go.
Thank you, that was great.
Yeah, the Washington thing is something I've been thinking about.